In Chapter 21, we're going to begin looking at the urinary system and its role in ensuring homeostasis in body fluids, as well as getting rid of all the waste materials that are produced as the body metabolizes the nutrients that it has been delivered. So let's check it out. When we think about the functions of the urinary system, here they are. First is excretion. So excretion is the removal of any waste product from the body. And so we use the urinary system to remove the salts that are unnecessary to the body, that are taking us out of homeostasis, any of the nitrogen-containing materials that are the wastes of metabolism. So anytime we eat proteins and use those proteins for energy, or we consume materials that contain DNA or RNA, there's always going to be nitrogen wastes left over, and they become toxic very quickly if they can build up in the body. And so we remove them. Those wastes include urea, and that's the waste of protein digestion, or not digestion, excuse me, but metabolism, and uric acid, which is the waste of metabolizing the DNA and RNA, the nucleic acids of the body, and other toxic or excess materials that are found in the blood or body fluids. It also is involved in elimination of these waste materials from the body. So we'll talk about urination, or the actual, the more technical term that's given to that, which is micturition. So micturition. It maintains homeostasis in body fluids, as we've said, so that we have appropriate levels of water and electrolytes in the body, and so that we have appropriate amount, appropriate pH or water volume. And then it is involved in regulation. So the kidneys produce a material, a hormone called erythropoietin. And we've talked a little bit about EPO. That's EPO. And so if the kidneys notice that the body is low in oxygen, then it produces erythropoietin, which stimulates the production of red blood cells. And then other regulation includes a material called renin. And this is not a hormone, but it's a hormone-like compound. It's an enzyme that acts like a hormone, and it's involved in regulating the blood pressure of the body. And the kidney is also involved in activating vitamin D. So as we've talked a little bit already about how sunlight helps to activate vitamin D, the kidney plays a role in that as well. So those are the functions that we associate with the urinary system, especially with the kidneys. So let's think about the kidneys and where they're located. They are found what is referred to as retroperitoneal to the abdominal body cavity. So retro meaning behind, peritoneum is a reference to the serous membranes that are found associated with the abdominal cavity. So they are found behind those serous membranes. So the consequence of this location is that the kidneys are not protected by the fluids of the abdominal cavity, but instead are found outside of that. And so what we'll see is that they are padded or surrounded by adipose tissue to cushion them. Interestingly, the left kidney is a little bit higher than the right kidney. It's covered by a fibrous connective tissue capsule, referred to as the renal capsule. The big old A&P term for that is the tunica fibrosa. Sorry, I'm drinking coffee. It's early in the morning, and I'm trying to get this done. The hilum of the kidney is, if we think of the kidney as being roughly shaped like a bean. If this is a black-eyed pea kind of bean, this region right here on the lesser curvature of the kidney is referred to as the hilum. The hilum is medial toward the center line, and it's the area where the renal artery brings blood to the kidney. The renal vein takes blood away from the kidney. There's a nerve that enters here at the hilum, and then this is where the ureter passes out and sends urine from the kidney. It is also where the entrance into the renal sinus is found. And as we've talked before, a sinus is a hollow cavity. So the renal sinus is a hollow cavity there at the hilum, and it is where urine collects, and it's lined with material. Let's see. Go to the next slide here. It's lined with material called the renal pelvis. So the renal pelvis is a bit of connective tissue that is found there inside the hilum, at the renal sinus, or inside the renal sinus there at the hilum, excuse me, and major collection point there for the urine. And I'm realizing I skipped a little bit of information, so I'm going to slide it in here. If you look up in your notes, there's some terms that are defined, or that are there for definition. The kidneys, they are the organ responsible for producing urine. The ureters, and that's how you say that term, they're the ureters. The ureters are tubes that transport urine. To the urinary bladder. And that is the official term for the urinary bladder. It's both of those words. So the urinary bladder, I'm not going to write that again, but you can see where I've already got that written in your notes for you. It's a muscular sac, and it's involved in temporary storage of urine. And I will expect you to give me both terms, urinary bladder. So it's a two-word name, and I expect you to give me both names when we talk about it. Just calling it the bladder is not precise enough. There are other bladders in the body, and so I expect you to refer to it as the urinary bladder. And then last of all, the urethra. This is the tube that exits the urinary bladder to transport urine to the external environment. So this is the organ that's involved in elimination. Okay. So the renal pelvis, that is connective tissue that lines the renal sinus, and it's the collecting point for urine. The renal pelvis will divide and divide into smaller and smaller chambers that are referred to as the major and minor calyces. The singular for that term is calyx. So a major or a minor calyx, and there are multiple calyx, then we would refer to them as calyces. So these are the tubes within the kidney that take the urine from where it has been produced and funnel it toward the renal pelvis. Let's see, I'm going to draw a little picture here. And you've got images in the book as well. I did not bring the book with me on vacation, so I don't know the exact page numbers, but I'm sure you can find them. We talk about two zones within the kidney. The central zone is the medulla. The more superficial zone is the cortex. And these, of course, are the renal medulla and the renal cortex. The medulla is composed of these sort of conical masses of renal tissue, and in between them, the renal cortex dips down in between them. So these are the renal pyramids. These, I've just drawn 4 of them. Of course, there's a lot more. Shade them in. This is all the renal pyramids. And then in between the renal pyramids, we have these regions where the cortex actually invades into the medullary area. These are the renal columns right here. So renal columns are cortex material that dips into the medullary area. And finally, the business portion of a kidney is the nephron. This is the structure that actually produces urine. And there's about 1.25 million nephrons per kidney, so a total of something roughly like 2.5 million, 2.5 million nephrons when you look at both kidneys combined. The kidney takes a lion's share of the blood that is put out into the aorta. Somewhere between 15 and 30% of cardiac output is used or is taken in by the kidney, and that provides a lot of blood pressure, which is going to be, we'll see, is very important to the production of urine. We have structures that actually work to increase blood pressure so that we can squeeze a whole lot of the fluid that's found in the blood out. The renal artery provides the blood supply to the kidney, and it enters the kidney at the hilum, and then it will branch and branch repeatedly, forming what are referred to as the interlobar arteries. So these interlobar, because it's between the lobes here, would be reference to the renal pyramids. So it runs through the tissues of the renal columns. And they, the interlobar arteries lead to the arcuate arteries. So now at this point we are up in the renal cortex. And they are the arcuate arteries because they arch across the top of where the renal pyramids are. So from there, we'll see radiating off the arcuate arteries are the cortical radiate arteries, and these radiate up into or through the renal cortex. Oops. There we go. So they radiate up through the renal cortex, and then they branch to form, finally, arterioles. There's this very small afferent arteriole. Afferent means leading toward, and what it's leading to is a capillary network called the glomerulus. It's a terrible word. Glomerulus. Glomerulus. So I encourage you to practice saying that out loud. Do it right now. I'll give you a little bit of time. I'll first say it with you. Glomerulus. And now you can say it on your own. Sounded perfect. Okay, so it's a network of capillaries, and it's found inside of a kidney structure. So now I'm distinguishing between the cardiovascular system and the kidney. So we have this knot of of capillaries with an artery that leads in, an arterial that leads in. This is the afferent arterial. Here's the glomerulus, and then leading away from it is the efferent arterial. And this glomerulus is found inside a structure of the kidney called the renal capsule, and together both of them are called the renal corpuscle. So we have renal capsule and the glomerulus plus, I'm not going to spell out glomerulus, but the glomerulus plus the renal capsule. That's what we talk about as, oops, I didn't spell capsule correctly. Those two together are the renal corpuscle. I'm going to keep doing that. So the blood leaves the glomerulus via the efferent arterial, and it goes directly to a second capillary network called the peritubular capillaries. And what we're going to see is that this tube that leaves the renal capsule is going to be surrounded by these peritubular capillaries. So we have two capillary networks right in a row before the blood goes back to the heart. And we talk about this as a portal system. We'll see that term later on. Again, but we've talked about a portal system once before when we talked about the hepatic portal system. For some reason it wants to end this dang slideshow. Okay, so the peritubular capillaries surround the renal tubule, and eventually that blood all collects into venules that merge and merge and merge, forming the cortical radiate veins, and they track right near the radiate arteries. So the cortical radiate veins then lead to the arcuate veins that track right alongside the arcuate arteries, and then finally the arcuate veins will merge into the interlobar veins that will merge into the renal vein, and all of this blood supply exits the kidney at the hilum and returns then to the inferior vena cava to be brought back to the heart. Okay, so there we have it. We've talked about the functions of the urinary system, a little bit of the anatomy, the gross anatomy of the urinary system, and then some of the macro and microscopic anatomy of the kidney itself, including that blood supply. And again, the blood supply pathway is that we have the renal artery that branches to form the interlobar arteries, which branch to form the arcuate arteries, which branch to form the cortical radiate arteries that lead to the afferent arterial, the glomerulus, then to the efferent arterial, and then to a second capillary network, the peritubular capillaries, which will then merge to form the cortical radiate veins, which merge to form the arcuate veins, that merge to form the interlobar veins, which merge to form the renal vein, which returns the blood supply back to the heart via the inferior vena cava. And of course, the whole blood supply coming to the kidney, it is the abdominal portion of the aorta. Okay, so there we have it. Any questions? You know you are always welcome to give me a call in my office or send me an email.